let's be honest for a sec. Wouldn't it be amazing if there was like a cheat sheet for getting promoted?
Yeah.
Besides like just being good at your job, which
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, I think we've all been there at some point, especially, early in our careers. We think, oh, I'm just going to put my head down, do amazing work, and it'll all just magically work out.
But then you see other people getting those promotions and you're like, hold on, what's the secret here? What am I missing?
Exactly. Like, is there some kind of, secret handshake I wasn't invited to?
Right. Thankfully, though, the video we're diving into today breaks down a lot of those unspoken rules, for lack of a better term, like how to actually climb that corporate ladder, even if you don't have all the answers on day one.
Definitely. I think you're going to like this one. It's not just the same old advice like network more or, manage up. This video really digs into the why behind the strategies, and that makes a huge difference.
So true. Okay, so first up, and this one kind of blew my mind, this whole performance versus perception thing.
Right.
Like, just because you're good at your job doesn't automatically mean you'll get ahead.
Yeah. And the example the video used really drove that home. Imagine two people, right? Similar skills, similar track record. One's constantly getting recognized, moving up the ladder. The other one's kind of stuck.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Why? What's the difference?
The person who's getting promoted gets it. It's not just about being good at your job. It's about making sure other people see you as being good.
Oh, wow. That is such a good point. I think for a long time, I just assumed that if I kept my head down and did great work, people would automatically notice.
It makes sense, right? Like, the work should speak for itself, but in reality...
In reality, there's a lot of noise, right?
So much noise. So unless you're actively shaping how others perceive your work and contributions...
You might get lost in the shuffle.
Exactly.
Which brings us to this whole proactive communication thing. Like, you can't just hope your manager is psychic and knows every little thing you're doing, especially if you're on a big team or things move really fast.
Absolutely. In a perfect world, managers would be super attentive and catch every win, but in reality, they're juggling a lot too, so...
You need to meet them halfway.
Exactly.
Okay, so give me some actionable advice. How do we do that?
Well, one thing the video mentioned, after you finish a big project, don't be shy about sending a concise summary to your manager. Just highlighting the impact, the results.
Love that. Short, sweet, to the point.
Exactly. And beyond that, try to contribute meaningful stuff during team meetings, like a thoughtful observation, maybe share a relevant article you read, just things that,
keep you on their radar.
Keep you on their radar. And don't underestimate the power of presentations, even if it's just 1 or 2 slides. Every chance you get to showcase your expertise.
It all adds up.
It all adds up.
Okay, so that's all about communication. But then the video got into something that, I'll be honest, felt a little bit House of Cards to me, this whole building strategic relationships thing. Like, did that feel a little ominous to you?
I see where you're coming from. When I first heard it, it did make me think of, backstabbing and climbing the corporate ladder over everyone else.
Right. But the video wasn't actually saying that, right?
Not at all. It's more about, being intentional about who you're building relationships with at work. And yeah, that includes people who are, decision makers, people who are a few steps ahead of you, but for the right reasons.
Yeah. So less, how can this person help me get ahead? And more, how can we both benefit from this connection?
Exactly. The video talks about seeing these relationships as mutually beneficial. You should be learning from these people, getting their insights, understanding their career journeys, what they value.
Because let's be real, if you were in a position to promote someone, wouldn't you rather choose someone you actually know and trust?
Yeah, 100%. Skills and experience are important, obviously, but that personal connection.
That can make all the difference.
All the difference.
So we've talked about communication, building relationships, but then there's this other piece, right? And it's something I think a lot of people struggle with, myself included. It's like, how do you make sure your achievements are noticed? Without sounding like you're bragging or
tooting your own horn too much.
Exactly. I want people to know I'm doing good work, but I don't want to be that person who's like, oh, look at me all the time.
Right. It's a delicate balance. And this is where that whole power of visibility thing comes in, which I thought was really interesting.
And this is all about showcasing your value in a way that feels authentic, right? Not just look at this amazing thing I did, but more like, hey, here's how my work is contributing to the bigger picture.
Exactly. And the video actually gives some really practical tips for this. One that stuck with me was this idea of keeping a running log of your wins.
Like a brag document.
Yeah, kind of, but not like a braggy brag document, more like
a highlight reel.
Yes. Think of it like a highlight reel of your accomplishments, positive feedback from clients, project outcomes, those sorts of things.
So that when it's performance review time or when a new opportunity comes up,
You've got it all right there. You're not trying to remember everything on the spot.
which, let's be real, is impossible. It's so easy to forget those small, everyday wins.
Oh, absolutely. And having that record, it not only helps you showcase your work, but it also reminds you of everything you've achieved. Sometimes we need that little confidence boost.
Totally. And speaking of showcasing your work, the video also talked about the importance of, like, sharing your knowledge more broadly,
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
like finding opportunities to teach others or mentor newer team members or even, like, write articles for your company newsletter, that kind of thing.
Exactly, because when you share what you know, it not only helps other people, but it also positions you as that go-to person, like, oh, this person's an expert on this.
You become a thought leader.
Ex-
Okay, so that all sounds amazing in theory, but what about those times when, despite all our best efforts, we don't get the promotion? We do all the right things, we put in the work, we build those relationships, and it's still a no. It's like, what do we do then? How do we not let that completely derail us?
Ugh, it's the worst, right? And it's so easy to take those rejections personally.
Especially if you feel like you did everything right.
Totally. But I think that's where the video really nailed it. It's so important to remember that sometimes it's really not about you. Like, there might be budget cuts or the company's going through some
Or
restructuring.
maybe the timing just isn't right.
Exactly. A million things that are totally out of your control. So as hard as it is, try not to automatically jump to, what did I do wrong?
Easier said than done, right? Especially when you've poured your heart and soul into something. So what helps? How do we actually deal with those setbacks in a way that, doesn't send us into a spiral of self-doubt?
Well, what the video said really resonated with me. Use it as a learning opportunity. Instead of letting the disappointment consume you, turn it into something constructive.
Like, okay, this didn't work out the way I hoped, but what can I learn from it? What can I do differently next time?
Exactly. And this is where that open communication we were talking about earlier comes in handy. Don't be afraid to have that conversation with your manager. Like, when I got passed over for promotion a few years ago, oh man, I was devastated. But I finally worked up the courage to schedule a meeting with my manager and just ask, hey, what skills or experience would make me a stronger candidate? What can I focus on developing so that next time I'm even more prepared?
That's so good. And it takes guts to have those conversations.
It shows you're serious.
Exactly. Like, you're not just sitting back hoping for the best. You're actively taking control of your career trajectory. It's so true, though. Sometimes those hard conversations, the ones that feel a little risky, those are the ones that teach us the most.
100%. Like, I remember after that conversation with my manager, I walked away with like 3 really specific things I could focus on. And it wasn't even stuff I'd been thinking about, but it made so much sense.
So it's almost like, instead of that rejection being a dead end, it's more like,
A detour.
yeah. Or
Yeah.
even like, you're on a road trip and you have to take a detour, but it takes you down this scenic route you never would have seen otherwise.
I love that analogy because sometimes those detours, they lead you to something even better than you could have planned for.
It's all about perspective, right? Like, are you going to focus on the closed door or are you going to look for the window that's open?
Exactly.
This has been such a good conversation. I think for so long, a lot of us, we just assume that if we work hard and do a good job, the rest will just fall into place.
Yeah, like it's this linear path.
But the truth is, it's so much more nuanced than that.
Absolutely. And that's what I loved about this video. It really pulled back the curtain on all those unspoken rules, those things that
Yeah.
no one ever tells you, but can make a huge difference.
Right. It's like we've been given this secret playbook now. We've got the proactive communication, the strategic relationships, the power of visibility, even reframing those setbacks.
That's a lot, but it's good stuff.
It's empowering. So if you had to leave our listeners with just one thing, one little nugget of wisdom, one thing they could start doing today to put all this into practice, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Since we were just talking about strategic relationships, I think my biggest piece of advice would be take a look at your network. And I'm not just talking about people at your current company, but people you admire, people who are a few steps ahead of you in their careers. Reach out to them.
Yeah.
Even just a quick message. Hey, Love to pick your brain about your career journey sometime. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to help.
I love that challenge. And you never know where those conversations might lead. Sometimes all it takes is one connection, one conversation
Absolutely.
to open up a whole world of possibilities. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to go update our LinkedIn profiles and start reaching out to some people.
Yes.
Thanks so much for joining us today. This was awesome.
This was fun.
And to everyone listening, we'll catch you the next deep dive.